Welcome to the Connect2 Marriage Podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. How is trust built in a marriage, and what are some potential pitfalls to avoid that would erode trust in your spouse? Hello and welcome to the Connect2 Marriage Podcast. I'm Jo and I'm your host for this episode. Now, in each episode of the Connect2 podcast, we'll be tackling questions that couples ask about marriage, communication, conflict, and so much more. So we hope you will keep tuning in to learn with us as you grow closer, deeper, and stronger in your marriage. Now, today we're exploring how to make marriages stronger through the art of building trust. Big word. Trust is often a funny thing in any relationship, right? It's always, sometimes we casually say, if you love me, you should trust me. But I don't know, is trusting another person similar to loving someone? Is it synonymous? Well, studies have actually shown that marriages fail because one person is unable to cede any territory to the other. So trust can be tricky because everyone has their own version of it. And trusting someone may also mean learning to have confidence in your own judgment and believing that they have your best interests at heart. We're going to jump right in and talk all about trust. And today we have as our guests Seng and his wife Mian. They've been married, this is their 35th year. Okay, so you can guess how old they look. And they have two adult children whom actually have spent some time with Focus on the Family before. And they're going to share more on this topic because they are also the founders of an organization called Bridging Hearts that really focuses on building marriages. They train marriage mentors and work with them. They are themselves marriage mentors, marriage trainers, marriage facilitators. So a warm welcome to Seng and Mian.
Hi, it's good to be here.
It's good to have you back. Thank you. Well, having been married for so many years, and I know you're proud grandparents of 3 grandchildren.
Yes.
And we just talked about, caught up a little bit about your 2 daughters and how, like, one obviously happily married and growing a family, and another one maybe to be married very, very soon. Obviously, it means that you guys really live out what it takes, to get marriage going, to make it strong, to keep it thriving. So we want to talk really about how foundational is trust in a marriage. So perhaps you could help us to unpack it. How would you define trust, or what does it look like in a marriage?
Perhaps I will start first from the wife's perspective. So to me, trust gives me the safety and security I need to live with my husband and to function in a marriage. So as a wife, trust to me is believing in Seng that he is who he says he is. He is the same person at home and outside in different environments with different company. He is the same person. I don't have to second guess him. And trust is also believing that he's reliable. He'll do what he says he will do. If he says he's going to pick me up at 6, he'll be there at 6. It's also believing that he accepts me for who I am. He cares for me and has my interest at heart. And I'm confident that he has my back. Especially with in-laws, and that he'll protect me. And also, trust is also being confident that he's loyal to me, he's faithful, and I have no need to keep secrets from him, and I do not need to be suspicious of his intent, that he will always have my interests at heart.
Wow, that's a whole lot. Seng, you sound like the perfect husband.
Oh, you mean she's talking about me? Wow.
Oh, you mean that was just theoretical?
For many guys, we just want to be who we are. We want to feel safe to who we are. But this can only happen when there's trust. When you know that your wife trusts you for who you are, and then you can be free to be who you are. That is so important. And then you can bear your soul with each other. When we first got married, it's difficult for me to be quite open, to be vulnerable with my wife. Because this is me and this is who I am, and I'm good, I'm strong, I'm able, And then if I be vulnerable with you, what if you don't agree with me and things like that? And then you become difficult. And I think that is one of those things that's why many men withdraw. They dare not have that vulnerability with their wife. So when I can sense that there's this deep trust that Mian has in me, it allows me to slowly open up. It's not instantaneous. It took 35 years. The first few years isn't good, but I think one of the things that we understand that marriage is a journey and we continue to work on it. And that's how we can be where we are today.
So meaning to say that, you can confidently kind of declare that the trust that you have in each other today is much greater or deeper than when you first started your married life?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Well, that's something to look forward to for all the couples out there.
There's hope.
Yeah, it only gets better, right? Sometimes we think that, if now it's like that, it will just get worse. But it sounds like this is an area of married life that gets better and only gets better.
And of course, it needs intentionality. You need to be aware of it and that you intentionally build that trust so that you can have the freedom to be who you are in marriage.
But it sounds like, as you shared the wise perspective or understanding of what trust looks like and how we would like to, receive that trust also from our spouse. That sounds like there's some difference between the husband's perspective and the wife's perspective, because I think Siok earlier you shared how trusting your husband is to also know that he will protect you and he would kind of be strong and be there for you, right? But then I'm saying to have that trust is where you can afford to be weak and afford to be vulnerable. So it's almost sounding as if like it will contradict each other.
That's why it is intentionality to be able to meet Siok Mian's need to be the protector, for example. Then I will really need to understand what is it that she needs from me, and then she really needs to understand and know who I am. And then once the trust is built, we are able to be who we are, and then we are able to also then manage our expectation with regards to what can and cannot be. And with that, we are better able to work with each other and continually build up the trust that we have for each other. Meaning that I trust her to be able to understand and empathize with me as I become vulnerable. And then as I gain that trust, as I gain that empathy and the understanding from her, you know what? I actually become braver and bigger.
But it sounds like either party must be willing to take that so-called risk, to take that first step, right? Blindly trust.
It is taking the first step that is very tough. But I just want to share that it is worth it. I mean, for both of us, we believe that our marriage is worth it. My wife is worth it. And for that, I'm willing to take the first step.
So in many ways, trust kind of grows in the relationship, which is why you guys have said that, the trust you have for each other today is much greater, much deeper than when you first started out as a married couple. But it's kind of tough, right, to always be a person of our word, to make sure that whatever we say matches what we do. Trust sounds so, not even in the workplace, right? Trust is a precious commodity, but it's very easily broken. So you talked about intentionality in building trust. Maybe share with us, what are some things that we can do to intentionally build up this trust?
I think you are right that trust is so fundamental in a marriage, but yet we sometimes take for granted. So this is what we discover, that we don't realize how precious it is until you lose it. So that's why in our marriage and also in our work with couples, we realize that it's so important to start right. So maybe I can share some of the ways that we can, start right, how we can build trust in the early years of our marriage.
Marriage is one of the most rewarding things in life. Yet, navigating marriage as newlyweds or an engaged couple can sometimes get overwhelming. Whether it's managing expectations of the in-laws, getting a good grasp of your family finances, or establishing good habits of communication and healthy conflict. Focus on the Family Singapore's Marriage Preparation Program aims to help you build a solid foundation in the early years and prepare you for the adventure of your life. Visit family.org.sg/C2 Marriage Prep for more information today.
If we start right and we start to build trust, the starting point is good. The starting point is good, and then it's easier to implement all of this that we set out to do.
The boundaries.
Setting boundaries and all that, But if we begin to set boundaries and all that, after trust is broken, wow, then the starting point is one of mistrust and suspicion. Then it's very hard to implement, to get it going. Yeah. So I thought we can share what we practice to build trust.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. I think starting right means that in the early years of our marriage, we continue to pursue each other, even after marriage. We do all the things that's necessary to build good marriage. We learn to manage conflict. We learn to have conversations. We learn to connect, to build emotional intimacy, to know each other's heart, to understand our values. Yeah, so the connecting and the building of intimacy is something that's got to be very intentional, and it must be consistent. Then another thing that we realized that was good from the beginning is to practice transparency. Even before setting boundaries, I think practice transparency and honesty and openness. We realize is so important. Maybe I share one of our experiences. Like, for example, Seng started his career in the military. So in the military, the environment are mainly males, right? So his colleagues, his lunch partners, the people that he go around with for meetings and all that are predominantly
typically
male.
guys,
Typically guys. So I don't give a second thought to, hey, who is he having lunch with today? It never occurred to me to ask him, only if he tells me where they eat, But I wasn't so interested. But then after that, he moved into education. Oh, it's different, right? In education, I think the people are predominantly females. Then I realized that, hey, I begin to wonder, who does he go out lunch with?
Not out of suspicion, but
no, it's just that, something that I took for granted. Hey, how come nowadays I have questions, just curious, curious. Yeah, so I suppose it's a female security thing. A wife security thing. So we talk about it. And I think what was really helpful was that he's very proud of himself. He's very... I'm proud of him too, that he is very sensitive to this. So this practicing of transparency is that he is very accountable to me. He will let me know, he will text me and say, I'm having lunch with so-and-so today. And many times it's just one female, one colleague.
Right.
I'm meeting so-and-so today. Or sometimes he comes back and he will share with me that, today he had this session with this staff. He will just, casually say that, when I do that, my door is always open. I don't do that alone with her, with the door closed. He would just casually talk about this, and that gives me a lot of confidence.
Right.
That gives me a lot of trust in him. So one very interesting episode, was that. So one day he just texted me that, I'm giving so-and-so a lift home. After that, I received a text from my sister. She said, I saw Seng on the road. I was driving behind him. But the person sitting next to him is not you.
Ooh. That sounds like the beginning of some drama.
Wow.
Okay, I need to know how this unfolded. Yes, carry on.
She has no intention. She's just being cheeky. But I was very confident, that, I know who she is. Seng told me. Phew. I think, the one who
it's me. Wow.
That caused me to realize, wow, how important accountability is. So it was a good thing that he told me, because I don't know what I would imagine if he hasn't, right? So this is something that we learn. This accountability is not something to curb his freedom or curb my freedom, but I think it's to protect our marriage.
True. And definitely gives reassurance.
Yes. So I think honesty, openness, that leads us to the next point that you mentioned about setting boundaries. So we have conversations about what is acceptable, like lifts, giving colleagues lifts and all that. He always texts me. That helps. We also set boundaries about in other areas as well, not just friendship and all that, but also in finance, in our activities. If let's say because of church ministry, I have to meet a guy, I will also tell him who I'm meeting, where I'm meeting.
Similarly, I don't meet another lady, one-on-one elsewhere for the work that we are doing, so that these are the boundaries that we set. And then
especially
if we do
now
that,
in our ministry,
especially now. So if I'm to meet a lady, I will make sure that I'll bring Sok Mian along. I think the other point about building trust is that it's for me as the husband to be attentive to my wife, to what she's saying and what are her needs and all that. Like, for example, Mian has been amazing, and then she has been staying together and then with my parents. And you know how difficult it is, to be living with in-laws. I mean, for her, from her perspective. I mean, from all wives' perspective, having to live with in-laws. Not all are pleasant, right? So then I have to be attentive to what she's saying. So when the appropriate moment comes, I can speak up for her and I can come to her defense and to be able to articulate what is needed to my mom or to my dad. And especially when got children, right? My parents become the grandparents, and then, of course, my daughters, when they need help, of course, to the grandfather and grandmother, when I'm disciplined, they want to run there. So in that, we also have to set the boundary so that Mian knows that in this family, we, the parents, still have got the responsibility over our own children, and that my parents knows the boundary, and that's how I protect Mian. And that's how it builds trust. And she knows that the things that I do is out of good intent, to protect her. And that requires really being able to listen intensively and for the details and all that.
I think what you said about starting it right
Yeah.
would really help. I'm just wondering, oh no, what if the couple hasn't started it right?
Yeah.
It's never too late to start. Yeah.
We might need to talk about rebuilding trust in a while. But I think one of the things that has come across to me is, just being very proactive about it.
Oh,
It sounds like these conversations actually need to be had even before the situation happens.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, I can imagine if, let's say you guys never even talked about letting one another know if you're giving a ride to a colleague of the opposite sex. And then your sister actually saw it.
That was quite amazing, actually. Quite scary.
Correct. And that's what I can imagine, right? Then it will really raise suspicion. If you were to raise it, if you were to raise it in that incident, I think typically the husband might think why are you checking on me? Why are you suspicious of me? Why are you accusing me?
Why are you snooping on me?
Why are you snooping on me? Okay, and on that note, actually this thing about snooping, there was a survey done in the UK which interviewed 1,000 married couples from 18 to 65 years old about their attitudes towards marriage, and they found that 10% of married women don't trust their partners. 9% actually check their husband's social media accounts to see what they're writing about and who they're speaking to. These numbers, I don't know, for better or worse, aren't as high as for the men as they are for the women. I don't know whether 10% or 9% is a high number, but if we're talking about how fundamental trust is to a marriage, I would say 10% is worrying. Yeah, and this phenomenon of checking on your spouse or snooping on your spouse, is it reflective of, maybe lack of trust or maybe the communication of that trust? And perhaps maybe underestimating the influence of technology and its effect on trust in our relationship. So on this note, we actually have in each episode a frequently asked question we address that couples would have about marriage. And this week's question is about this. My husband confronted me about some remarks I made to a friend in a private text, revealing, therefore, that he'd been snooping on me. I tried to explain the conversation, but I feel disappointed in his snooping since it shows his mistrust of me. What would your advice?
Okay. I think snooping is like checking on your spouse without his or her knowledge. That's why you snoop, right? I think it's motivated by suspicion and mistrust. It is not something that couples wants to do. In this case, I would really encourage the wife to share with the husband about her disappointment in his snooping. To be able to share. And that takes courage. And I believe that most of the time, spouses have no intention to snoop around. So choose not to be offended and give your benefit of doubt to your spouse. Many, many times, snooping occurs, right, when something else had happened first that resulted in the so-called need to snoop. For example, some spouse really need to access social media for whatever purpose. And these are legitimate reasons. Like, for example, Mian, she will use my phone for certain online shopping because it's using my account and things like that. And then she will just use it which is legitimate, which is okay. And then she had my password.
Yeah, we have access to each other's
she had free access to my phone and all that. And she will use. So we know of couples that got into trouble because the reason to look at the phone, example, starts with a legitimate reason. But somehow when going through the phone, they stumble onto something that they are not aware of.
Right.
And as a result, they become suspicious, which is why at the beginning we were saying that transparency, honesty, openness becomes very important. And then if you come across something that, that shocks you, I think it's necessary to really come together to articulate that disappointment, and so that you don't spiral deeper into mistrust.
It's kind of like the negativity will feed into
Yes.
So you got to deal with it early and deal with it quickly.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe I suggest some good practice. Yeah. So yes, we have encountered
Quite a number of
couples who stumble upon, I would say, the spouse's betrayal,
Adultery, infidelity,
or debts or things like that.
Finances.
So a good practice would be that once this happens, one party, or so-called the one who discovers the truth, will have that discomfort. It may first start with like a suspicion, but if it's just one time you don't have enough so-called like evidence to confirm that yes, this is what my spouse has done, right? So I think a good practice which we always encourage couples to do is whenever you feel that discomfort or you sense that some boundaries have been crossed, be it in your personal space. In this case, I think the wife felt that her personal space has been intruded, right? So that discomfort, whether it's in your personal space or in your spouse's relationship with others, address them with your spouse as soon as possible. Yeah, I'll explain why as soon as possible. So have a conversation with your spouse to talk about these concerns. It's going to be a very difficult conversation because it can be quite frightening. You don't know what you're going to hear, right? So, but it is still very necessary. Yeah, because your relationship cannot move on like this, with all these doubts and suspicion. Yeah, so you have to make the effort to have that conversation. Why having this conversation as soon as possible is important? Because I think we have the tendency to let our imaginations go wild, right? We'll start thinking, oh, who is this? Is this the first time? All sorts of things. So attending to this as soon as possible will actually help sometimes clarify just a misunderstanding. It may end up nothing. I remember we have this young couple. One day the wife called me and she was very troubled because she realized that her husband is befriending a lot of ladies on Facebook. She was feeling very uncomfortable about it, and sometimes because it's open, so she sometimes look at the comments and all that they have, is like, it really just make her feel uncomfortable. She wouldn't say it's flirting, but she just feels uncomfortable and she didn't know how to approach it. So we decided that never mind, come, let's talk to the husband. So we had a couple session. And what happened was that with us, I think she has more courage to bring it up. So she brought it up to the husband, and the husband said, oh, is it? Oh, okay. I will unfriend them. Yeah. Say, oh, I didn't know. So, wow, that taught us something, that actually sometimes the spouse is not even aware that they have crossed certain boundaries with their partner. Yeah, so that's why must bring it up. Imagine the anxiety, the fear that she had. It was actually unnecessary. It was such a relief for her. And such a relief for us that actually there was nothing. This really shows us that it helps to have that difficult conversation early, because sometimes it is just clarifying a misunderstanding and set new boundaries. Then we talk about boundaries, like, okay, next time the husband is very open and say, okay, next time I won't befriend all these people, or next time I check with you first. So he's very open, so that helps, right? So this is talking about clarifying boundaries and what helps. Okay, but what if it is really, conversation is really something that there's a breach of trust? Now, it is still good to intervene early before things get deeper, these things get more complicated. That's true.
Spiral out of control.
It's out of control. It's very difficult to deal with. Yeah.
In other words, there's only benefits. No downside for nipping in it in the bud.
But it's not easy. It's not easy
Yes.
to be vulnerable, to be approaching your spouse to ask some of these difficult questions. Yeah.
I think the word you used was like if you feel uncomfortable versus I think we're quite quick to what like that.
Yes, like
And then it
Seng
becomes
said.
blaming, right?
Yeah, like give your spouse the benefit of doubt. Don't react first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have had lots of practical tips today. Before we go, we usually will issue a couple challenge to our listeners. So today, if you are listening to this podcast with your spouse, would you take an extra 5 minutes at the end of this episode to share with each other what is one way you can foster greater trust or build trust in your marriage? I think we've heard a lot about, starting strong, but we've also heard that it's not too late to start if you did not
Never
start
too
to
late.
start
Yes,
early
never
or
too
start
late,
strong. Yes, so what is just one way? I mean, we've heard lots of practical tips. So share with each other, even if your spouse isn't listening to this podcast and you think it will be helpful for your marriage, or perhaps listen to it again with your spouse this time. So with that, we hope you've enjoyed this podcast. In our next episode, we're going to delve deeper into this topic of building trust, where we're going to talk about rebuilding trust, maybe talk about some of the issues that kind of shake that trust in marriage. So do tune in to hear part 2 of our discussion. Well, if you know of a friend or couple who are newly married or getting married this year, do invite them to check out our Connect2 Marriage Preparation Workshop coming up in May. As we heard today, it's good to start strong, and part of that is to attend a marriage preparation workshop. So visit family.org.sg/C2 Marriage Prep to find out more. So we hope you followed and subscribe to our Connect2 podcast. Do share it with a friend who can also benefit from it. And thank you for tuning in. Until next time, do take care of yourself and your spouse.